We just made a claim that truth exists. I mean, actually, we made a claim that we can come to know what the truth is. But then we have to come to the claim that there is such a thing as the truth, not just a truth and your truth and my truth, which we hear a lot about today. And in fact, I ran like headfirst into this when I was trying to outline my book on abortion. One of the chapters, the one that I thought I was going to start with, is murder is always wrong, just as a blanket statement. And then I would build on like the different rules that I think are true that would make abortion immoral, you know. But I thought the first one that would be good to start with is murder is always wrong. People can agree with that. And then I thought, oh, crap, I used the word wrong. That means that there is such a thing as wrong. So then I started, okay, the first chapter then has to be, there is such a thing as objective morality, or there is such a thing as moral truths. And I'm like, hold on, truths. That implies that there is such a thing as truth, and not your truth and my truth. And like I kept going deeper and deeper into this. And then I realized that is why this is the one philosophical question that everything starts with. Because you can't have a conversation, you can't have disagreements. I mean, forget whether you agree or not about the morality or immorality of abortion. We can't even begin to have a conversation if we can't agree that there is a truth to be held in this, that there is something that is true and something that is not true. Which we talked similarly about beauty. There is such a thing as beauty. You might be able to recognize it or might not be able to recognize it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. There is such a thing as beauty. Similarly, I think you could arrive at a similar conclusion in truth. Not just because we don't know what the truth is means that there is no truth. There is such a thing as truth. For different reasons. One, that it's self-evident. In fact, you can't deny it without affirming it. You can't say truth is not true without trying to say that that is true.
You're saying that the true of something not being true
it's a non-contradiction, yeah. And then we could delve deep into refuting, you know, your truth and my truth. But it's kind of tiring. Like, I feel like it's so, like you said, it's kind of self-evident. You can't have a society that operates with your truth and my truth. And murder's wrong for me. But if you want to have, and I mean, I put murder as like...
but I feel like the people that say your truth, my truth would agree that murder's wrong.
Well, yeah, that's why you start with like the most obvious thing, like torturing children for fun is always wrong. Like you can get most people to agree that that's wrong. And then that, like, at least you shoved it to one extreme to get at the fact that there is such a thing as truth. We can come to an agreement on it. We might not know what it is. There's a line where, okay, yes, camera.
Okay.
So we shoved it all to one extreme, saying, you know, torturing a child for fun is always wrong. You could make that claim, but then, you know, there's a variance of like degrees of, I don't know if this is wrong, and you start getting into that, but you can still know that there is a truth and there is a line, and we might just struggle to find it as moral fallen creatures, but it doesn't deflate the fact that there is a truth to be held. And we hold it as self-evident. Like, we do assume that most people would agree with us. I'm not too sure. Like, do you think people just agree that there is a truth?
Yeah, I think whenever you draw the child torture example, that's pretty self-evident to I think anyone.
But then how can you be a moral relativist?
I think you can pick and choose what you're a moral relativist about, and you just kind of like circumvent those places where it gets uncomfortable. In
1984, in fact, one of the main themes is one of the main things that the author points to is people have doublethink, which is when people can think two opposite things that are, and they can hold both of them true in their mind. Like torturing a child for fun is always wrong, and also some things are wrong and some things aren't, and it's my truth and your truth. And those would be two very opposing things, but they can hold both things in their head at once.
Yeah,
you know, and people just lived like that, and that corrodes society, corrodes your mind. We should always be wary of doublethink, like in our own selves, and we have that. Like, everyone probably thinks two things that are opposing, but it's good to try to catch those at least. But even so, I do think that
the person that justifies subjective truth, how would that person justify or like reconcile the whole child suffering?
I think they just don't think about it. I think
what
you're
do
right.
They say?
Nothing.
They have to have a response.
Well, then they would say, yeah, you catch them. Like, they would have to agree with you. They're like, yeah, you're right. That's wrong. But then,
objectively,
well, unless they are being very,
if they're truly consistent.
Yeah, if they're consistent, they'll have to give you that's not always wrong. I've heard that in debates.
I've heard that actually in debates.
And that's a huge got you moment with it, like a moral relativist. And then you'll hear people that will say, I don't know what the term is for this. Alex O'Connor talks a lot about it. I'm not sure if he still holds this view of like murder is bad as like an emotion, like yuck. Like he's like, that's not good. I don't like that. But he wouldn't hold that that's always wrong. Or like, but I don't know how you get there. I like, honestly, it's maybe I haven't studied it enough for it to be a more comprehensive view. I don't understand how you could hold a moral relativist view when there are such things that are very clearly immoral. But we say very clearly, and that's to us, and it's not self-evident that all societies at all times thought the same thing that we do. I mean, just look at something like slavery. Like at some point, like that seems abhorrent to us, and in some societies it didn't. So I'm not saying that that's in some cases right. I still think that there's such a thing as moral right and wrong. But I don't know that we should be so quick to say that everyone thinks that way. I don't know. They should, I guess. But
if the moral relativist is truly consistent, I think they would concede that you can't say that these terrible things like torturing a child is morally wrong, because nothing can be definitively said to be morally wrong. But I think they would say, but as a society, we have agreed that it is wrong, just subjectively.
Yeah, but that is the conclusion that I think they would be forced to come to. But that's a really crappy view. Maybe, and look, I haven't had a conversation with someone that holds this view. For them to be, maybe they think that that you can have a society that just collectively agrees in those values, that this is not something that we're going to do, not because it's inherently wrong, but because we think that it's not good for the common good of the people. And I guess you can get to
it's
utilitarian.
Subjectively wrong it should be subjectively wrong to everyone, because that's what we agree on.
Yeah, I guess that's the conclusion that they would come. I'm not sure if that works. I mean, I certainly don't agree with it. I don't know how they could back it up. Maybe I'm sure they try.